You have 21 questions of your own you're publishing this morning for the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak. All of them, of course, to do with David Cameron, his lobbying of Rishi Sunak, etc. What, in a nutshell, do you want Rishi Sunak to do?
What we want Rishi Sunak to do is to publish details of all the meetings that he organised for Lex Greensill and David Cameron with Treasury officials, where David Cameron and Lex Greensill were trying to access loan schemes to keep their dodgy business that has since gone to the wall afloat, and in the process trying to earn David Cameron tens of millions of pounds. So, Rishi Sunak has released the text messages that he sent to David Cameron, but that's only half the story. We want a full disclosure of what meetings took place, what pushing the Treasury, which is what Rishi Sunak said in his text message to Cameron, actually meant, and what special deals were done, because David Cameron had the telephone number and the WhatsApp details of the Chancellor, that the 3 million people, for example, who were excluded from government support during the pandemic were never in a million years going to be able to access that sort of access to top ministers in this government.
Greensill did manage to persuade the British Business Bank to allow it to become a lender under the CL Bill scheme, the coronavirus large interruption loan scheme. But David Cameron's main ask of government for a bailout for Greensill Capital failed, and they went bust. So no matter how untransparent and shifty David Cameron's actions might look, according to you, it is true to say that the system still worked and David Cameron didn't get his way.
Well, Greensill was only one of two non-regulated banks to be able to access the coronavirus large business interruption loan scheme. So there are questions to be asked about how Greensill, given the difficulties that it's turned out that they were in, were able to access that government-funded scheme. But also, Greensill won other government contracts that didn't even go out to tender, so absolutely no transparency. So, for example, we know that sometime after this private drink that David Cameron had with Lex Greensill and the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, Greensill were able to access NHS workers' data to be able to pay them early. That was something that happened without any transparency, any contract. It did, though, happen after that private drink with the Health Secretary.
Tory Sleeves, that's powerful language. You're also saying it's bigger than ever. And you and I are tragically old enough, if I don't want to embarrass you there, but I certainly am old enough to remember where Tory Sleeves was originally used. It was in the 1990s. And then Tory MPs were taking cash in brown envelopes to ask questions in Parliament. I mean, that was clearly corrupt. The damage here is less clear, though. And the truth is, the ministers, ex-ministers, David Cameron's even, are abiding by the rules as we know it so far, as weak as they are. So to call it Tory Sleeves bigger than ever, are you not slightly in danger of overcooking this and over-exaggerating the problem?
I don't think I am, for this reason. In the 1990s, it was mainly backbench Conservative MPs doing those cash for questions, the brown envelopes, the meetings at the Ritz-Carlton in Paris. This is about serving Conservative ministers being lobbied by a former Conservative Prime Minister. But also, we know that this is just the tip of the iceberg. £2 billion worth of contracts in the last year have gone to close friends and donors of the Conservative Party. Robert Jenrick tried to secure for Tory donor Richard Desmond a fast track on his planning application at West Ferry. So Greensill is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Tory Sleeves. Even John Major says that the rules need to be toughened up, and he knows how bad Tory Sleeves got in the 1990s, and he's saying today that the rules aren't good enough. If the rules haven't been broken on this occasion, it tells us more about the toothless nature of those rules than it does about the probity of government ministers today.
Let me ask you this. Have civil servants, perhaps some quite senior civil servants, been leaking key information to you, the Labour Party, that you then place with newspapers to fuel this lobbying story?
I saw that story today, and I thought, how desperate are the government? The problem here is not about people leaking things to the Labour Party or to journalists. The problem is what's going on at the heart of the government.
Well, that might be right. Rachel, that might be right.
I would be focusing on sorting out the mess that's going on right now, rather than worrying about what information the Labour Party's got. But no, I'm not having any conversations or meetings with civil servants about these issues. We're doing our own digging and our own work. And
Rachel, I'm not sure if you can still hear me. I think we might have lost the line there. I think we lost the line. We'll get Rachel back. Gloria,
she didn't like that suggestion.
Well, do you know what? I mean, so what if they are? Let's hear what Rachel has to say. We'll get her back. But is there anything wrong with senior civil servants leaking information they think needs to get in public? It's called a whistleblower. Rachel, you're back with us.
Sorry, I don't know what happened there.
No problem. We're talking about whether or not civil servants are leaking information to you. And it has to be said, there's only a very small amount of people who would have known David Cameron texted Rishi Sunak, for example. And if civil servants are leaking to you, what's wrong with that? That's great. You've got a whistleblower. You can expose this government.
Well, the stories came from investigative journalism, brilliant journalism, at the Financial Times and the Sunday Times. And good for them. But this should have been a matter of public record. If there was any transparency at the heart of government, then this would have come out not through investigative journalism, but through the proper processes. And Rishi Sunak, remember, only released his texts with David Cameron after the story had broken. You know, this government has got no shame, and ministers, they don't want the sunlight disinfectant that David Cameron once spoke about. They want to do things over private drinks, a chumocracy, which is at the heart of the Conservative Party, acting in the private interest rather than in the national interest. And I honestly think that is a disgrace.
OK, shall we level with each other, though? Because this isn't just a Tory problem, is it? There is the case of former Labour ministers, when Labour in government, then going on to lobby ministers then. And then there's, of course, the former Labour ministers and SPADs now, lobbying their old colleagues on the Labour front benches as we speak on behalf of private firms. And you and I both know who they are. They've gone off to work for Uber, Deliveroo, Facebook. I won't name them. I'm sure you won't either. But huge organisations with great power. They lobby you, and there is an issue with that as well, isn't there?
Well, this is about the lobbying of government ministers, people with power to change things, the people with power to deliver contracts, the people with power to change the rules about government schemes. That is what David Cameron was trying to influence, not trying to influence an opposition party, but trying to influence the government who have the use of taxpayers' money. Taxpayers' money should always be used as in the national interest. The Chancellor should be the custodian of the public finances and always acting in the national interest. Instead, he was, according to his own text messages, pushing officials at the Treasury to look to see what they could do to help his old boss, David Cameron, and David Cameron's new boss, Lex Greensill. This all happened at the heat of the pandemic last year, when everybody should have been pulling together, as we did as a country, in the national interest, not to line our own pockets, which is what David Cameron was doing, ably assisted by serving government ministers today.
Parliamentarians have power as well, don't they? Lords and MPs, they pass laws, that's power. Should all parliamentarians be banned from lobbying at the same time, lobbying for commercial interests? I'm thinking maybe of former Labour Minister Lord Miners there, who chairs big PR firm Edelman and vice chairs Global Council. Peter Mandelson, another Labour peer, he chairs Global Council, runs the thing, a major lobbying and strategy business. What on earth are they doing making laws at the same time?
Well, I don't want to see any stone left unturned when it comes to investigating wrongdoing. But we're having this conversation because of a sleaze that is engulfing the Conservative Party today, where ministers are being lobbied by their former colleagues, which is influencing the decisions that they are making and the taxpayers' money that they are handing out. And so I don't want any stone to be unturned. But let's be very clear. Standards have deteriorated significantly in the last 11 years under this Conservative government. The rules that they have in place are toothless. They're not working. They must be toughened up. And this government must deal with the sleaze that is engulfing them and is damaging our democracy and the very essence of public service. This is why this is so damaging and so corrosive. And it's why the government must sort it out as a matter of urgency.
Understood. Rachel, last question. In a word, do you wish your government, the Labour government, did more when it was in power?
Well, look, these sorts these sorts of claims that are now coming out about Conservative ministers. Nothing like this was lobbied. It was put
Just a
at
word.
Labour's for when we were in government. That this is a Tory sleaze that is engulfing the Conservative Party. That is the issue that we're talking about today.